Good day, good day, good day, and welcome again to All for Success. I want to thank each one of you for the opportunity to swing by this channel and hopefully enjoy listening to me chit chat a little bit about all things that support Harry and Meghan. Plus, every now and then I'll throw in a topic or two about something else kind of as an aside. But I want to welcome all of you who have an opportunity to join in for all for success. And this is a moment, get your coffee ready, okay? So you can kick back and relax this morning before you get started on all of those chores that you probably have to do and things you need to get out and about to take care of this morning. I know there are some times in the morning that I actually get out up and early way before the sun comes up. And now that fall is on the way, um, it's a little bit darker and it's a little bit colder. And I tell you what, it makes you want to stay in bed just a little bit longer. But for those of you who are going to have some coffee and then you're going to get ready for your morning rush, I hope you can put on All for Success. Even for those of you who are getting up, getting out to walk or ride your bike or any of your physical activity, I hope you have an opportunity to listen in to All for Success while you do that. And generally, by the time I have wrapped up, you would have either walked a mile or biked 2 miles or something like that. And you may not even remember that you are doing that physical activity or workout, yoga, whatever it is you're doing at the time. So thank you all for coming by. And this week I did do a little bit less in the gym, but I did walk a little bit more over the past week. As you all are probably thinking, I missed a couple of Saturdays because I was taking care of my I have grandchildren. Isn't that crazy? I have a grand. But anyway, as a grandma, I was on duty and I was trying to remember what parenting 1 year olds are like and what things I needed to remember and how many things now are outdated. It's too funny. But the 1 year old kept me busy, kept me up and moving. And I tell you, you have to have a lot of energy to stay on top of what they are looking at and what they're doing and where their little fingers are going. But it was an exercise all to its own. So thank you all for being patient. And here we are back at All for Success. And as I told you, we are going to, let's see if I can gather up some slides. So over the past week or two, I do want to acknowledge, and I'm going to be trying to pull up my slides while I'm doing this. I would love to acknowledge the fact that there have been a lot of things that have happened, a lot of activity in the UK media, and there were quite a number of activities that our wonderful couple attended, and several charities and things that they are sponsoring that were also talked about. So I know most of you have seen many of the topics spoken about. So we all know that Invictus was fantastic. I mean, most of us who I definitely watched Heart of Invictus, and I would say that it is a documentary that's worth watching more than once. Now, that's depending upon your interest and if there are other people that you might want to introduce and talk about what Invictus is about. Interestingly, I mentioned to many of you that I have worked in and around the military, and I even mentioned the documentary to members who I run into that are currently serving. A lot of people were unaware that Heart of Invictus um, was something that was being published. And it is an interesting thing that in and around the military, you're often surprised that the word does not get out. It is somewhat surprising nowadays. Please excuse me. My service time was back in the 80s and 90s. And it is interesting to me in current day how there is a complete difference in how things are spread as far as military information. That's one thing. That's something completely different. but I'm just talking about in general things among the population of military personnel, um, like something as simple as when is a basketball game, or is there an activity in or around that people can participate in. The method that that information used to be transmitted was very simple back when I was in the service. It was everything was word of mouth pretty much, and there were um, often gatherings that would be had where people would go down a list of information to tell you about something happening. And it could be simple things. um, you might stand in a group of 50, 60 people, and someone would just be standing there saying, oh, yeah, Monday there's going to be a fun run. Tuesday there's going to be a barbecue. Wednesday, um, there's a meeting that's going to be held and it's going to talk about housing. So there was just a gathering of a bunch of people, and someone would be basically announcing what was going to be going on or what was coming up. And so, a feature like Heart of Invictus, the discussions of the types of military athletics, sports, and activities, these things were just basically mentioned um, constantly, but it was again face to face and word of mouth. So, if all Army was going to be playing football against Navy, you better believe we were going to be told about it. The game was going to be Thursday, the game time, 6 p.m., and everyone was going to be there. And it was just a different time and a different method of operation. So if there was an activity that involved service members like that, the announcements were definitely given face to face. It was definitely announced in a group, and you weren't going to there was almost a very slim opportunity to say, oh my gosh, I hadn't heard about it or I didn't know. So with today's methods of information, which are mostly electronic now, things are very social media driven. You could mention to, let's say, 10 service members, hey, are you familiar with um, and I'm going to talk about the US military. You could mention to them, hey, are you familiar with the Warrior Games, which is a military function, or supported, I'm going to say a military supported function, where we have members of the military who have suffered injuries, but they are playing at high levels in the sports world. And you could mention this to probably 10 military service members. Hey, do you know when the Warrior Games will be played? And they would probably look at you and be confused about what you're talking about. You might even say, which this was something that was super common when I was in the military. I might say to a service member, hey, are you going to go and participate in the Army 10 miler? I have now had military service members ask me, well, what is the Army 10 miler? I am shocked. I mean, for me, that is a shocking response. But again, it just speaks to the time that we're in, the things that seem to interest people, and the method of communication and information that is being disseminated. It is definitely different nowadays. So it is very difficult to have any particular type of function or activity sponsored and well received by many people who are knowledgeable about that activity. And I don't know why I just wanted to mention that as an observation. So, Invictus, which is a very um, impressive event, just the organization of it by itself, the fact that it is supporting military members, you would believe that the communication and the dissemination of all of its intricate details and sponsorships and participation and the games themselves, you would think that it would be blanketed across all military channels. But I want to let you know that it is somewhat thin, which I'm not sure why that is, but again, it's the way that things are handled today. And a lot of things are now social media driven. a lot of information is disseminated now in a way that, you just have to go out and get that information. It's expected of you, the individual, to seek out what is going on. And it is no longer a function of leadership or management to inform you. So that has changed a little bit, and it disturbs me to a to a degree because, again, I'm coming from a different perspective. So it's a challenge. But anyway, we'll talk a little bit about that as time goes on. So drink your coffee. And this photo here that I have up on my slide is just one that, I don't know, I like it. And every time I see him in his photos where he is in his military gear and regalia, I just find that Harry looks very distinguished to me. And he is a handsome man anyway. And when we are always referring to those across the pond who have seemingly determined that the fact that this man decided that he and his wife and family needed some time to step back and regroup, gather themselves as they were feeling under attack, as they were feeling overworked, as they were feeling under a great deal of pressure. And instead, they were met with, we don't care, get yourself together, suffer, and enjoy it, because we are British and that's what we do. At least that is what was given to them as what do you call it, an excuse for the answer to their request to be no, right? Hey, can I take a break? Can I take some time off? Can I take a step back? No, no, you can't. We don't care how bad things are for you. You can't take any time off. You must suffer because suffering looks good on you. Okay. And this is what we feel. And I say we. Okay. Parents of adult children, you know what I'm talking about. This is what we see our family going through, the Sussex family. Someone asked me not long ago, what is it about older people? And I kind of count myself in that group, although I won't admit to it. But someone asked me a question. Why is it that it appears that older people seem to want young people to suffer from things? Like many adults might have a statement that if they suffered from something, if they suffered through something and they struggled through something, uh, they want to know why we feel, or why it appears that older people want younger people to also suffer from those things, that they felt that is what adults seem to project, like as if you're saying, well, I suffered through it, so then you should suffer through it, right? And basically, this is in a similar situation, the situation that Harry and Meghan were faced with. They were told basically that, well, all of us have dealt with these horrible things being said and done to us. So even though we're the source of some of it, you too and your family should just knuckle down and suffer through it like us. And it was an interesting thought, um, about that perspective, because older people, and especially I would say those in the parenting realm, there are two dynamics that are true at the same time. One of the dynamics is when we became parents, or when we were coming up, there is a level of existence that we experienced as young people or young children, and there are things that we may have endured in our youth that we definitely do not want our children to endure. And I can look at it from the sense of laborious hardships, right? For example, if as a teenager I went out into the field in my home in my home county and pulled tobacco over the summer, from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. and the temperatures got as high as 98 degrees. That is not something that I have envisioned for my children to be doing, right? I have not envisioned, or I have no want of my children to have that as a lifelong career, right? And so this is how I'm sure our grandparents and our parents would look at some of the things that they had to do, or some of the labor intense um, positions they may have been in, right? So we're not looking. You may have your children, and you're thinking, well, I'm not looking for you to. And I'm from the South, so that's the example I use, right? So I'm not looking for you to work in the tobacco fields every summer between your high school years, where you are laboring for 10 to 12 hours, and from July to September, where the temperature is as hot as it can get, you know. So we would say to ourselves, well, we would like to provide a life for our children that doesn't create and doesn't have that kind of requirement. Now that's over here on one side. Now here's the other thing. Here's what is called the problem, or I don't know what you would say, dilemma perhaps. At the same time, when you are raising children, you also want them to have the power and the strength to absolutely endure some of the hardships that they may face. So, in other words, although I don't want you to have to go and work in that tobacco field every summer, I still want you to have the mettle, the power. I want you to have the strength to be able to have endured it if you did. And I think that's where the difficulty comes in. That's where some of the conflict comes in, because a parent is looking for you to have the strength, the power, and the ability to overcome adversities in the way that your parent overcame the adversity. But we don't necessarily want you to have to endure the exact same hardships that we endured. But I want you to have the strength and the will to fight through the difficulties that you may face. And that is where the dilemma exists, right? I'm not looking at you and saying, oh my gosh, I hope that you have to scrub your kitchen floors on your hands and knees the same way I do. Actually, no, you can use a mop. But I want you to have the power, the strength, the force of will to actually be able to clean the floor. So that's where this struggle exists. So this perhaps is where elements of the royal family missed the mark with their response to Harry and Meghan's dilemma. They weren't, Harry and Meghan, I don't believe, now this is just my thoughts, throwing this out there. They are not weak people. They were not two children that just couldn't get it together. They were not folks who, they had endured nothing. They hadn't gone through anything. And so they just had, and I hate to hear this when I hear other people on talk shows, especially the tabloid talking heads, saying things like, oh, well, they just had it so easy. I mean, their lives were so privileged. Harry's mother died when he was just, 10, 12? This boy lost his mother. And yet someone will actually be on a talking heads show saying something to the effect of, well, he just lived a privileged life. How can you be so blind? This young man lost his mother. This mother was basically his 100% sole support. Why? Because he was not heir to the throne. That is where all the support goes. That's where all the soft gloves go. That's where all the handle him with care is going to go. Harry was just, oh, well, he'll be okay. And he was left to that. And so for people on these tabloid shows to make these comments as if he lived some sort of life of luxury, and simply because they're looking at the royal family and they're looking at the jewels and they're looking at the money, it is amazing to me that a parent, especially people who are responsible, how they could miss any of this. But they talk like they do. But that's another thing. That's not actually the royal family. That is this institution, right? And the same thing for Meghan. Here you have a young lady who has come up in a single parent household living in California. And that alone, just starting off, is already going to be difficult, right? Then you add in whatever difficulties that those parents are having, and those difficulties could be many and they could be numerous. All of that is now in the life of that child, right? And yet, Meghan, just like Harry, was able to work through that, go to school through that, have a vision for how they wanted to see their future. This individual was able to actually achieve the status of being a working actress. No doubt it might be to the fact that her father was involved in the film industry. And so she understood how to navigate that industry much better than just the average person. But this in no way, this again is something that is often misinterpreted by people who might be looking at children a different way. It can't be misinterpreted that there was nothing in their lives to overcome simply because someone may have brought them a cup of coffee to the table, right? It doesn't mean that they didn't have actual things to overcome in their lives. So, anyway, I don't know why I kind of diverted off into all of that. So, listen, now we're going to go a little bit more in depth. And I am so sorry. I have to apologize, you guys, for missing those other weekends. But I'm glad to be back and chatting with you. But listen, we're going to move on. But anyway, just those are the things to think about, food for thought, and something to perhaps think about even in your own relationships, that the two things do not mean they're not mutually exclusive. Wanting our children to be able to endure the things that they may have to endure doesn't mean I want you to experience exactly what I experienced, but sometimes people get those things confused. So over the weekend also, we had, again, like I said, they talked about Invictus and they did a great job there. And everyone, even though the UK tabloids were begrudgingly trying to say that Invictus was a good thing, they begrudgingly then tried to find something to pick apart. Their Centibali, we all know that went off very well. The polo players did a great job, and this is Harry, and he's posed there with his friend, I guess a lifelong friend, and I can't remember his name. What was it? Oh gosh, you guys tell me what his name is. I've forgotten. But he's in there with his lifelong friend, and they're posing. Same thing. Great charity, doing great things, and everyone would begrudgingly give him his props for it, but they hate the fact that it was as successful as it was. And then, in the meantime, on the UK, over the UK barrier, you have entities that outwardly working with charities and outwardly being a part of the communities that they wish to support. That was never the royal thing. That was not what the royals were doing, right? Because they considered that trying to be a celebrity. And now that Harry and Meghan were saying, hey, well, it's a modern way to do things, maybe we can work in that realm and in that arena. They didn't want them to do that. Oh, no, we want you to dial it back. We want you to kind of be at home. We don't want people to see you in public. But now the same people who didn't want them to move forward like that are the exact same people who are doing what? Doing their best to try to be a version of this outward interaction with charities and community, just like Harry and Meghan. and they're doing their best to try and copy and emulate that function. And it's very difficult because on the one hand, the UK royal family, they were highlighting and clapping and what do you call it? Elevating the fact that they weren't going to be seen, that they wanted to be in the shadows, and they wanted to be royal and dignified and upstanding and all of these things that are considered royal family ness. You know, you're seated in a chair, stiff as a board, you don't move your head, and people are just bowing to you and holding your hands and kneeling and, you know, scraping for favor simply because of your royalness, because you have been deemed and considered the royal entity. And so now they're in this position where the world is looking for a little bit more. You know, societies are now actually asking for you to do a little bit more and to justify what it is that you do. And that is also very difficult for an institution that is as ancient as the royal firm. They haven't had an opportunity to upgrade and get their head around how the societies of today are looking at them and what they want to see. So they're having a difficult time. And I don't know if they're going to be able to meet it. But I will say this, and many people are noticing it, of course, is that they're constantly trying to imitate the Harry and Meghan phenomena. They're trying to look like the Harry and Meghan phenomena. You know, when Meghan came on the scene, people started talking about fashion. What is she wearing? Oh, where did she get that? People were running out to purchase some of the things that she wore to particular events. Well, now the royal family wants to try and have a discussion about fashion. They want to now present the ladies in the royal family as what they're as a fashion icon. Well, it's going to be very difficult because now you're trying to copy having fashionable influence when your whole shtick earlier was low key, high class, understated. I mean, those are their words, right? That's the media UK words. Low key, high high end. They only talked about fashion from that perspective. And so what you looked like to modern people, what you looked like to modern celebritydom is you came out looking like people in um, outfits dated in the 1940s and 50s. You looked dated and you looked out of place. But now they're going to try and make the turn. They're going to try to make the turn by imitating, right? And it's going to be very difficult because although they want to present a person like Meghan, they want to present her as she's a gold digger and she was just trying to strive to get to the top and that she's done nothing. Unfortunately, what you're actually talking about is a woman who was an adult. She was over 40, okay, who actually had a career of her own and was a working actress, which is not easy to become. And so they want to present her as someone who had no skill set, no nothing to give. And if you're a person who has any sanity and you look at how the UK media is trying to make you see Meghan and Harry, you have to be really blind because these two individuals were actually the only working people who interacted with community and understood what the modern world was like. But for some unknown reason, the UK tabloid media is trying to make people believe that Harry and Meghan are children that are spoiled, which, I mean, the absolute total ridiculous. Single parent household, mother dead at 12, but I'm spoiled. Okay, by who? But anyway, this is the stuff they want to plant in the mindset. And of course, as we have all been paying attention, a lot of it is not working, right? Much of it is failing. But anyway, I'm going over, I don't know why you guys have got me on this rant, and I'm going over what we already know. Now, why was I actually here today? Okay, why was I actually here? All right, so I had told you guys, and before I get started on this, listen, please like, share, and subscribe. I want to see those thumbs ups, clicks in my in my wonderful um, chat and channel. Please leave comments. I hope you guys get an opportunity, even if I can't chat back to you immediately. I am hoping that you can at least chat to each other. And I wanted to note here, thank you so much that I'm going to see if I say the name correct, Dware Wiley. Thank you so much for being here. I am so glad to see that you were here to make it to All for Success. Sometimes I can see some of the chats and then I can actually post the chats and acknowledge the fact that I see you. And thank you for coming. Hopefully I'll have an opportunity, if anyone is making any comments later on, that I can come down and chat back with you. So please feel free to post a comment. I love to see them. So back to the like, chat, and like, share, and subscribe. Don't forget to do that. Now, what I was going to do, what I had talked about in the earlier times, right? I had talked about the fact that, what was I saying? I had talked about the fact that we were going to talk about, for the upcoming season, which is October, and in this season we have Halloween. So I know most of you are familiar with how Halloween operates, especially in the United States. You know, it's a big deal for kids. It used to be much more of a big deal for kids to get dressed up. They dress up in costumes and then they run around from house to house, and then they would knock on doors, and the first thing you do is you yell trick or treat, right? And then you go out and get your candy, and hopefully someone would offer you some candy, and then you would run to the next house. Okay, so that was kind of the whole score. Now, I'm just going to kind of go on a blurb, and I know if you all want to research more about this, I think it's fun for you to look up perhaps the origin of Halloween. All right, and that date is 31 October. And the reason for that is because the next day was November 1st, All Saints Day. Okay, now some of that origin, a lot of it was very pagan in its nature, right? This time period was supposed to be a time period where they considered the world, the what do you call it, netherworld, and our world was possibly coming together, and so creatures from the other world could move into our realm. So that's what is supposed to be occurring on the date of Halloween, on the night of Halloween, that these otherworldly beings would be able to cross over at this time. And then there's a whole uh, practice of everyone was dressing up so that these other creatures couldn't tell if you were a human or not, so that you wouldn't become a victim of some of their mayhem. But anyway, that's some of the origin stories. And I encourage each of you to look some of them up. There are some wonderful stories if you are interested in that type of information. But I found it entertaining. But a lot of it, coming up to Halloween, the reason that I wanted to kind of delve into this is one of the major characters that is often seen at this time period are people dressing up as witches. Witchcraft and witches are a big theme during this period. And I wanted to talk about this. Why do I want to talk about this? Because, and because this thing to thought. Witchcraft is a label that has been given to many types of practices over time. Again, historically, if you are looking up, and it is a lengthy thing to do, if you look up again witchcraft alone or the origins, you're going to get pagan origins in nature, right? Um, you're going to get resources like that. If you are looking at this topic from a biblical perspective, and caveat, let me halt here. Just as when people are talking online, they generally will say things are alleged, or someone will say, I need to make a statement to say this is an alleged accusation, or this is something that's not legally binding. I want to make that statement in my mentioning of anything religious, or if I mention anything biblical. I want to make that statement because I want to talk about biblical information from a literary point of view. And by that, I mean if I am reading a story book, that is how I want to mention things in on this channel. Now, if you were here at home with me and we were talking in a different way, I would be speaking in a different way, and I would have a different perspective in the way that I'm talking. But I'm saying that because I want to make sure the caveat is I'm not saying anything to draw ire, and I'm definitely not trying to convert anybody to anything, and I'm definitely not interested in trying to um, change anyone's beliefs about anything, and thus I'm not giving you a projection of any type of religious study, but just kind of the literature itself. So, in the literature of the Bible, for example, there is terminology about witchcraft. There are instances where they introduce people who are performing certain types of practices or performing certain types of activities, and the terminology that it has been given in the Bible is the terminology of witchcraft. Now, folks, if you have time and you would like to study language and you would like to go back to the original language that the Bible is written in and how it was translated from that language to another, whether it was in the Hebrew symbols, whether it was in Aramaic, whether it was translated to Greek first, whether there was Latin involved, I think you should do that because it's fun to do. Because when you hit each language and you hit each specific culture, then you would have another insight on why terms are used the way they are used. And it can be fascinating. Okay. So, biblically, right? And I'm going to reference King James Version of the Bible. Okay. Who is King James? Right. Everybody look him up. And why is there a version of the Bible with his name? Yeah. Let's go into that. Okay. And for the fun of it, I know most of you who are religious scholars, he wanted to get a divorce, right? Okay, so let's rewrite that book. So, anyway, that's another story. But witchcraft is often a term that is used, and in our current day world, the thing that we see in our mind's eye is the woman in the black dress with the pointed hat, the face that might be somewhat distorted, or this woman who is doing things, and she's generally going to be doing bad things to people in the neighborhood, in the community, killing animals, and trying to encourage children to eat off of her gingerbread house, all kinds of stuff like that. That is what we are seeing in the terminology of witchcraft. Well, biblically, that terminology, and you'd have to look up one of the witches that are referred to, that's most commonly talked about, is the witch of Endor. That's a character that some of our, again, back to the Bible scholarship, for those of you who are interested, look up witch of Endor and why she was being sought after, why they were looking for her and what they wanted to try to gain from her. But the point being, these women in this particular connotation were spoken of because they had a knowledge, they understood how to do certain things that the general population might not have been privy to. And that is why things like potions, they would make things that would help you if you had a cough or a cold, or if you had a rash. They might make elixirs. That's another word, the word potions and elixirs. But today, for us, the common term might be a lotion or a medicine, right? But their skill in these areas often branded them the terminology witchcraft, meaning that they, for whatever reason, and all of you can have fun finding why this reason came up, that they had this knowledge that other people didn't appear to have, right? So they were determined to be performing methods of witchcraft, right? Now, I was going to get into this topic a little bit more, and this is me just kind of whetting your appetite, because I'll talk a little bit more about it next Saturday too. But I wanted to talk about this topic in reference to, let's talk about what you see in the UK tabloids, what you see in the UK media, how you see the royal family moving and operating, what they're doing, and what's happening in public, what you're seeing being spewed out in the UK tabloids, which is all over the place. One day they're telling you that one day a UK tabloid media writer will say something like, is there going to be a reconciliation between the Sussex family and the royal family? At the same time, you'll see this another article from the same newspaper that says there will be no reconciliation between the Sussex family and the royal family. So they're splattering both of those things out there, right? Now, in the world of witchcraft, these techniques are called chaos. There is a manipulation tactic, right, to create chaos so that the masses are, and here's one of these words, hysterical. The terminology used is to create hysteria. Now, the interesting thing about these today's tactics, and I wanted to draw the parallel to what used to be called witchcraft, because the performances are the same, right? I mentioned very quickly the practice of mimicry. Even in in biblical stories and various performances of what was called, again, the label witchcraft, the ability to imitate and to perform, to go about, if you had an enemy and you would dress up like that enemy and you would try your best to look like that enemy, this performance and this psychological method of operation was done to create confusion, hysteria, and in some cases, to mimic your enemy was a way to control your enemy. And by that, I mean, I don't know if any of you watched the film Single White Female. It was a hysterical female. This girl moves in with another young lady, and then all of a sudden she begins to take on that young lady's personality. She's got her hair cut like her. She's wearing the same kind of clothes, and on and on. Okay, so if you watch this film, what you're seeing in the old world, in old terms, it would have been a form of witchcraft called mimicry. And what that individual was going to do, essentially, they were simply going to become that other person. And for all those viewing, for all those on the outside looking at this, they would begin to forget who actually was who. They would begin to forget which person actually originated a particular item. And it is, in the old world, a form of witchcraft, right? Now, today we might look at it and think of it as some kind of psychological operation, all right? But if you were a Bible scholar, or if you were the type of person who studied these things in the ancient times, you would only consider it a form of witchcraft, right? Because we're throwing out all of those things and elements to create confusion. Now we're going to look like, act like, and dress like who we consider our opponent, right? We're doing this because they're our opponent or our nemesis. And before too long, especially those who are highly supportive of them in their realm, those who are highly controlled by them in their realm, in other words, the masses in the UK, it will be indistinguishable for them to know whether something actually originated with the royal family, the royal firm, slash, or if this is something that Harry and Meghan or the Sussex family has stolen from the UK family, and that they are trying to be like the royal family. So, in honor of October and in honor of upcoming Halloween, please watch this space. Please watch what they do as if you are looking at it from the Halloween perspective, because their movement, their operation, the fact that they are trying to be a watered down version of who Harry and Meghan are here in the US, and they want to counter everything that they do, they want to counter everything that they accomplish by somehow presenting themselves as being able to do it, and they want to present themselves as being successful at it. And the reason that this is kind of interesting and it's inspiring from the royal family perspective is because the entity that is the royal firm, it is actually an entity that this performance, this what do you call it, this method of operation, from colonization all the way through to the modern times of financial dictatorship in some arenas. This is the method of operation that throughout the world, people feel that they need to worship these people and to honor these people. And they also feel like they need to imitate these people, right? And this is what creates that chaotic confusion, because in the world of witchcraft, they are always pulling from you how they are going to be operating and be seen. And before you know it, you really are actually imitating what has been taken from you, or at least that is how it will appear, right? And this, my friends, is the strength of what was called witchcraft. So it's a fascinating story. It's a fascinating topic. I am going to, perhaps, if you can get me to study like I'm supposed to study and perform on this channel the way I am supposed to, I will include later in the community tab several references and several books that talk about these particular topics and can give you some historical support, so that you're not just saying, oh, well, she said that. I am in if I do what I'm supposed to do, I will add these things to the community tab. But I do want you all to have if you have an opportunity to know that biblically, that is one of the main sources for the terminology witchcraft. But I need to caution each and every one of you that the language is the reason, the way that we use our language today, that is the reason why we add certain connotation or certain we import certain visual cues to the terminology being used, witchcraft, sorcery, and whatnot. But the methodology, if you were instead to look at it from today, much of the methodology is similar to psychology, right? It's media manipulation. Some of the tactics are still chaos driven, but the terminology of that time period was witchcraft because it created a lot of mayhem and it would create a lot of falderall amongst the community. If you deployed certain tactics and certain behaviors and you were trying to manipulate a community, you created confusion, chaos, and hysteria. You could tear up a community by practicing and doing these things, creating, trying to manipulate other people so that you could control them. You could create havoc in a community. And thus we have the term biblically witchcraft, right? So, I'm just going to throw that out there and we're going to have some more fun with that. I say fun. I hope you call it study, whatever. But we're going to talk a little bit more about that. And I'm going to talk about as next Saturday, I'll be throwing together some of the specific things that we're seeing in UK tabloid media. I'll probably pull out one or two examples, one or two pictures as examples of what you're seeing and what I'm talking about and how it's represented. Now, why am I saying all these things? Because our number one goal in this wonderful world of supporting the Sussex squad, supporting the Sussex family, our number one goal is to continue to watch members of the UK tabloid media and all of those people who were behind the scenes doing these things that I'm talking about, suggesting these things that I'm talking about, creating the chaos and the confusion that I'm talking about. We're going to watch them drop like flies. We want to continue to see them struggle in their own arena. And as that song said back in I can't remember when, it was a long time ago, we're going to sing that song, Another One Bites the Dust, okay? Because we have another one down and another one down and another one bites the dust. And that's why I want you all to watch and keep up with whether or not our favorite character, Dan Wooten, is going to leave the UK. Yes, because another one down, another one down, another one bites the dust. So anyway, we're going to give an applause for watching. But okay, all right, everybody. Thank you all for coming to All for Success. And yes, I am so sorry. I went a little bit longer than I had planned to. I really did. But I want you all to please comment, please like and share and subscribe. And please continue to enjoy your day. I know you got a lot of things to do. And I want to end with my favorite slide because she's a mom of adult children just like I am. And I want to always throw her my honorifics because I think she's done a great job and it's wonderful that she can continue to support them as they still continue to march forward. So we're going to talk a little bit more about Halloween because we've got a couple more weekends, and we're going to talk a little bit more about the specific things that we see coming through social media, tabloid media, and our method. And I think one of the methods people have developed is putting the others on mute. Please continue that operation. But there are some other things, some other tactics, let's say, that can be observed that may also squash this even more. And I'm going to continue to support all of the Sussex friendly channels that understand it is our positivity and our support of the righteous that will continue to uplift this family. So thanks again, everybody. Thanks all of you. Thank all of you for coming and joining me here at All for Success. So that for that, it's a wrap. And I'll see you all hopefully next Saturday about the same time. Thank you.